thank you so much, Julia, for your beautiful introduction and your very lovely reflection on your time in Timor. And I have to say a very big thank you to all at Radford College for organising these annual trips to Timor. And I think, the words that you've just shared with us are testimony of just how, life-changing the experience of visiting a country like Timor-Leste, our closest neighbour, is. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank very much the team of friends from Radford College who've worked so hard to organise this amazing festival. I feel very honoured to be in such distinguished and inspiring company this morning. Before I begin, I wanted to mention to you that the images that I'm going to share with you on my PowerPoint are intended to give you a snapshot of my journey alongside Timor-Leste. They're not presented in any particular order, but I do want to draw your attention to this photograph, which I took in Dili in the lead up to the Declaration of Independence in May 2002. For me, it really encapsulates how pivotal to personal and national freedom education is. And it's why I've put education at the forefront of everything that I do in assisting to rebuild Timor-Leste. It's quite overwhelming for me to look back over the past 17 years since I made Timor-Leste my home, and to reflect on the momentous changes that have occurred in my life and in that of my new homeland since that time. In the short time that we have together today, I can't possibly hope to share all of them with you, but I will do my best to hone in on just some of the highlights and also share with you a few of the lessons learned, which I thought might contribute in some way to the themes of this festival, particularly for the young people present here today. So, rebuilding a country from the ashes of destruction and violence is a pretty turbulent process. As you probably know, Timor-Leste was a colony of Portugal for some 500 years, up to 1975, when the Indonesian military brutally invaded the country. As a result of the 24-year-old occupation, round about a quarter of the population perished, either due to massacres, disappearance, starvation, or illness. For me and for the other leaders of the country, there have been some pretty sharp learning curves and quite a bit more madness than method at times. There have been some constants too, however, a few guiding principles or lessons for life, spanning the time that I first became an activist for Timor-Leste through to my years as the country's First Lady and on to the present day. I wanted to frame my comments today with some of the lessons learned or rules of thumb. So the first one that I think is quite important is to embrace risk. We live in a very risk-averse world. I'm sure that term didn't even exist when I was in high school. If ordinary East Timorese men and women had eschewed the risk involved in voting for national independence in 1999, they would still be living in servitude and under the heavy weight of oppression today. When I wrote my book, A Woman of Independence, one of my motivations was to encourage young people in Australia and elsewhere to be conscious of how important it is to take risks, particularly where your conscience and sense of social responsibility are concerned. The risks that I took in supporting the East Timorese resistance movement have been somewhat overplayed in the interests of good media stories in the past, but nevertheless, I did willingly put myself in danger at times. However, the risks were calculated, never reckless, never blind, and were always taken with a view to advancing a just cause in which I believed fervently. And one of my great buddies in that struggle and during those times of danger and risk-taking is here tonight, this morning, Abel Guterres, who's the ambassador of Timor-Leste here in Canberra. Thanks for being here, Abel. And so that brings me to lesson number 2, and that would have to be, let passion guide you. I think that all significant human achievement rises up from the fire of personal passion. Xanana could not possibly have led a ragtag guerrilla army of a few hundred men to victory over the military might of Indonesia's armed forces without a passionate belief in the inevitability of success. I established the Alola Foundation, a women's NGO focused on the health and well-being of Timorese women and their families, in 2001 because of a passionate belief that I could make a difference in my new homeland by ensuring that women have a place and a voice in its reconstruction. I credit the fact that Fundação Alola is today one of the most successful NGOs in Timor-Leste to the persistent passion of its leaders and to the fire in the belly of friends and supporters in the Australian community and beyond. Over the past 20 years, I've been overwhelmed by the passion, vitality, and determination of the friends of Timor-Leste who've worked tirelessly to support our rebuilding efforts. And that's not just in terms of raising funds or helping in very practical ways with rebuilding of schools and other infrastructure like Rotary and other service organisations do, but also raising awareness, creating opportunities for Australian people to engage in much the way that Radford College is doing with your regular visits to Timor. Lesson number 3 would have to be preach what you practice. In other words, let your life experiences guide you in helping others. There's nothing like personal experience to lend power and credibility to one's advocacy. I learned this lesson in 2002 when, as a new mother breastfeeding my second child, Kaiolok, I was asked by UNICEF to speak at a launch at Dili National Hospital of the Baby Friendly Hospital initiative. On that occasion, I did more than just speak out in favour of the support of exclusive breastfeeding at the level of health institutions. I also announced my plans to establish the first National Breastfeeding Association of Timor-Leste under the umbrella of the Maternal and Child Health Program at Alola. When we launched the association in 2003, I had my infant son at the breast throughout the ceremony and on many other public occasions to press home the point that breast is best. I count as one of the most satisfying achievements of Alola the fact that rates of exclusive breastfeeding have risen from around 30% in 2005 to around 65% in 2013. Figures for early initiation of breastfeeding after birth have also risen some 10 percentage points to 98% over just the past 4 to 5 years. A recent study conducted by UNICEF on food and nutrition provides us with a sobering reminder of the challenges associated with educating families about good nutrition and healthy diets. The survey showed that Timor-Leste has the highest percentage of children under 5 who are moderately or severely stunted in the world, matched only by Burundi. Stunting has a massive impact on both physical and mental development, which mostly cannot be reversed after a child reaches the age of 2. It's a very sad thing indeed when a country's children cannot reach their potential due to poor nutrition. Fast forward 10 years from 2003 and the establishment of the National Breastfeeding Association to my own breast cancer diagnosis in 2013. Similarly, I've drawn on my personal experiences of diagnosis, treatment and recovery to raise awareness of women's cancers in Timor-Leste. I established a women's cancer support group called Haliku, along with a handful of other survivors of breast cancer in March 2014. And we're working to let women across the country know about the basic facts and the importance of early diagnosis. Just a few weeks ago, we conducted a 2-day training of some 30 volunteers, mainly women, who will assist us to inform communities across the country of the risk factors associated with women's cancers and, again, the importance of early detection. Allow me just to say that if women and their families and our Ministry of Health in Timor are paying attention to what I'm saying around this issue today, it's because they know I'm speaking from a platform of direct personal experience rather than on the strength of merely an academic or theoretical interest in the issues. Lesson number 4 would have to be make yourself redundant. A fundamental principle of all development work is the notion of skills transfer, which eventually renders the aid giver or mentor obsolete. It may sound simple and obvious, but it's not an easy goal to achieve for countries and individuals at either end of the relationship. I feel that in general terms, Timor-Leste has taken enormous strides forward in terms of professional skills development, self-confidence and experience of the world. Sure, there's still a great deal to be done, but I feel that with the withdrawal of the UN and just over a decade's experience of self-government, social and economic life have found their level, and it's the right one for the East Timorese at this particular juncture. All of us who've worked hard to contribute to national development in one sphere or another know the frustration of dealing with systems and structures that don't operate with the level of efficiency and professionalism that we are accustomed to. And we all have answers for how Timor-Leste could do it better. While acknowledging that the guiding hand of friendly governments and organisations continues to be vital in the years ahead, I do believe that there is a need to define some new rules of engagement at this point in time. Rules that put the Timorese in the driving seat and we Malay, or foreigners, where we belong in the back. I take it as a huge measure of success that apart from presiding at board meetings and ceremonial events, Alola has very little use for me nowadays. Our strategic plan that was set forth about a year ago puts forward the goal of gradually reducing dependence on financial and technical inputs from abroad, particularly in the maternal and child health field, in order to encourage them to become self-sufficient whilst continuing the vital health promotion work that they do. Lesson number 5 would have to be give the job to a woman. God could not be everywhere and therefore he made mothers. That's a lovely quote from Rudyard Kipling. Of course, it's universally true that investing in women and girls' education has vast ripple effects in terms of the health and prosperity of a society. In Timor-Leste, I believe that women are the great untapped resource of the nation. By necessity, I'm talking in generalisations here, but ask any employer of an East Timorese woman and you'll doubtless find my analysis confirmed. As students and as workers, Timorese women are assiduous and disciplined, reliable, humble, honest and excellent team players. Of Alola's 90 staff, over 2/3 are women. Women are reasonably well represented across all sectors of Timorese civil service, parliament and other areas of social and political life. But I truly believe that more affirmative action and policies and practices that more actively promote women's leadership in all spheres of public and private life are the wisest investment that our leaders can make. Sadly, family violence continues to be a blight on Timorese society, and the 2010 domestic violence legislation seems only to have gone some of the way towards altering behaviours. The 2009-2010 National Demographic and Health Survey revealed that 38% of East Timorese women have experienced or are experiencing physical, sexual or emotional violence from a husband or male partner. A friend of mine from Los Palos, who runs a shelter for women and girls abused by their partners or family members, recently reported to me that the home presently houses a larger number of women and their family members than ever before. And a shelter in Dili is currently providing a safe haven to some 68 young girls who've been raped by members of their own family. Some as young as 13 are pregnant. No doubt greater understanding of domestic violence as a public crime has resulted in higher levels of reporting and has emboldened women to speak out and take action. So as you can see, we still have our work cut out for us in terms of boosting women's well-being, health and status within Timor-Leste's society. As Goodwill Ambassador for Education, I'm reminded on a daily basis of the urgent need to improve the quality of education in order to better address these problems. Some schools, particularly in rural areas, have half or less than the number of classrooms they need to accommodate students, which is tragic since, as Julia pointed out, there is an incredible thirst for education and for knowledge. In some places, that lack of school infrastructure translates into shift teaching, with the result that, on average, children are getting only 3 to 4 hours of schooling per day. Almost all schools lack libraries. Timor-Leste itself doesn't have a national library. These facts, in tandem with teachers' poor understanding of modern child-centred teaching methodologies, poses a serious challenge to our education authorities. An issue that has been of great interest to me in recent years is the issue of language in education policy, or what language is used to present curriculum content. Helen Keneally, who is here. Helen, where are you? Oh, she nicked outside. Helen has assisted me in this task of actually analysing some of the issues surrounding how language is used in the classroom. Timor-Leste has 2 official languages, Portuguese and Tetum, which is one of 16 local languages. It's kind of like the lingua franca that a lot of people in the country speak on a daily basis. But in addition to that, there are 16 other local languages that haven't been used in education, in spite of the fact that in some rural areas, communities only know that one local language and maybe a smattering of Tetum. However, the policy to date has been, or until recently I should say, has been to use Portuguese as the language of instruction starting from preschool, with disastrous consequences for children's learning. So our study was done in 2009 by the World Bank, which showed that children on average were taking up to 4 years to learn to read and write a single sentence in either Tetum or Portuguese. So thanks to a study that Helen was involved in and a number of other academics, and a lot of work by our UNESCO National Commission, there has been now a recognition that it's very important for children to learn first in their mother tongue and to gradually transition to a second and a third language. And of course that's a lesson that we should have learnt a long time ago here in Australia from our experiences of how languages are used in schools in Indigenous communities. Sadly, Australia hasn't quite got it right. In Timor, we haven't quite got it right yet either, but we're heading in the right direction, which is very encouraging. So there's still so much to be done in order for all these Timorese to live without the heavy weight of need and dependence. I'm just going to flick forward now to a slide which allows me to segue into my conclusion. So This was a festival that we organised a few years ago, celebrating those languages that I just mentioned, the 16 local languages, which to date have not enjoyed any official status within the education system. That's just a bit of a tourism promotion. You can see how beautiful the country is. It has very, very many problems, but as Julia pointed out, incredible sense of community, wonderful, friendly, hospitable people, and very gorgeous beaches. So that's an invitation to you to please visit. I had to include this picture here. This is actually Helen's father, Paddy, because this picture is all about the long-standing bonds of friendship that exist between the people of Timor and Australia, dating back to the Second World War. So Paddy served on Timor during the Second World War, and it was a really awful thing that Australia was there on Timor. Australia was there in the country for its own interests to ward off a Japanese incursion. And as a very direct consequence of Australia's decision to put Australian troops on Timor, between 40 and 60,000 Timorese lost their lives as a result of direct retaliation from the Japanese troops. In spite of that, tremendous bonds were established at that time due to the fact that the Timorese provided very active assistance to the Australian soldiers to keep them safe over the period that they were conducting their guerrilla campaign against the Japanese forces. And that friendship and solidarity is celebrated in a museum and memorial that I know has a special place in the hearts of everyone from Radford College who has visited there. And it's not just remembering the horrors of war. As I said, it's about that bond of love and friendship between our two nations and two communities. So finally, a long overdue acknowledgement of Timor-Leste's sovereign rights in relation to maritime boundaries would contribute in a very significant way to reducing the gap of wealth, privilege and quality of life separating our two great countries. So I hope that if you don't know much about this issue that you might Google the Maritime Boundary Office or the Timor Sea Justice Campaign and find out what you can do to help us win that little battle. So I want to thank you for listening to me today, and I hope that in sharing my story I've helped to ignite a spark of interest in a proud little nation called Timor-Leste, and that in sharing Timor-Leste's and my own story I've successfully conveyed the amazing achievements, acts, connections and heroism that can come and spring from little things. Obrigada, Bara. Thank you very much.